Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Dill, a team that really is flying under the radar, according to the college football world. This Notre Dame program, and it is, I'll be the first one to say, hand up, I've probably been sleeping on this program too, going back, watching the spring game, really diving in to this roster and depth chart. There are a lot of reasons to really believe in this Notre Dame team heading into 2024. And you even go back to the 2023 season where, they went 10-3. Their only losses were on the road against Louisville, where they pretty much laid an egg, on the road at Clemson, which was a very good team, and then a heartbreaker against Ohio State. That was one of the best teams in the country. And I think the wild part is, I think they get better at a lot of important spots heading into 2024. I want to take a little bit of a deep dive, talk about how this Notre Dame team is going to be so dangerous in the 2024 year. Before we get into, and as always, just want to say thank you to you guys. It's been a blast taking deep dives into these programs during the offseason. The amount of support y'all continue to show to the boys truly does mean a lot. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Much more importantly, would love to get some feedback from you guys in the comment section. We continue to learn a ton from you guys in the comment section. And Dill, I'm going to give you the T-box here. This Notre Dame team flying under the radar. How are we feeling about them in 2024?
And honestly, a lot of teams that don't hit the portal super hard and maybe weren't like the Georgia of the year before, those teams always seem to get a little bit of disrespect. And Notre Dame certainly falls into that batch. And they're just not a team that has the ability to hit the portal because A, they do a good job retaining guys, and B, they recruit the high school level really,
They don't need to hit the portal.
They don't need to hit the portal. And I don't think that's a bad thing because you kind of look, Notre Dame's been really good for the past 2 years. And obviously, Marcus Freeman era got off to a bit of a rocky start with some bad losses in his first year. But you kind of look, they really came on that year, played really good last year, as you kind of said. And frankly, I think they're getting a huge upgrade at quarterback. I think Sam Hartman did not have a great year for them. I'm really excited what Denbrock and Riley Leonard can do in this offense because I do think they fit a little bit better together in terms of how they're
really good fit between Riley Leonard and Denbrock. And even going back to that team in 2023, Dill, I didn't even realize this till I went back into the notes here. Top 10 in scoring offense, top 10 in scoring defense. Legitimately, just a couple plays not going your way in some key
horrible turnovers. When you have those horrible turnovers in big games, that is the difference between an 11-win team and a 9-win or anything else. So again, I think they clean that up. They get a little bit more balance, let's say, on the ground. I think this team can be really good.
Let's dive into Riley Leonard and Coach Denbrock. You noted off the top. I completely agree. I think this is a perfect matchup. And you look at how Denbrock was able to use Jaden Daniels during his time at LSU. Riley Leonard's he's not the caliber of athlete Jaden Daniels is. Riley Leonard can certainly make it happen with his legs. And another thing that I feel like is kind of just flying under the radar is how good Riley Leonard was in 2022 before getting banged up in 2023. This was a quarterback that led a Duke team that did not have a lot of talent to go 9-4. He threw for almost 3,000 yards, ran for almost 700 yards. Riley Leonard, when healthy, is really one of the best quarterbacks in the country. You put him in this Denbrock offense. I think this offense has the capability taking a massive step in 2024.
Because you love what Riley Leonard brings on the ground. You saw how effective Denbrock was, like you said, in using Jaden Daniels and how much it opened up the game for everyone else. And again, those wide receivers were great on LSU, not take anything away from them, but just everything worked together last year. They just did a really good job. And shout out the coordinator project. If you guys are interested in getting a deep dive on what Mike Denbrock does, he did a really interesting video. And again, you kind of look at what you've seen from Riley Leonard. That ability to run the ball and even be a little more physical, obviously, in Jaden Daniels. I think it's going to be huge. I think it's going to allow maybe this offensive line to get a little bit of help in terms of how they open things up and put a little more pressure on defense. Because last year, obviously, with Sam Hartman, you kind of had to run a very bland kind of offense just because he doesn't have a great leg talent and he doesn't have great arm talent. He's got obviously a lot of experience and can throw the ball accurately at times, but you just didn't have any real explosiveness coming out from him. And I think Riley Leonard gives you a lot of different options.
And you guys know I'm a huge Sam Hartman guy. Went to Wake Forest, been watching him for years. Not a knock on Sam Hartman. There was a reason Sam Hartman came back for 6-year college football. Wasn't quite that NFL talent where you look at Riley Leonard. There are a lot of things to like about what he brings. And quite frankly, the ceiling is much higher. Two other talking points that I want to touch on. One, there will be a lot of casual college football fans, I'll say it respectfully, that are going to look at this Notre Dame running back room and say, oh, it's going to take a step back without a guy like Audric.
When we talked about Texas A&M versus Notre Dame in terms of roster battle, I don't think I was giving enough respect to Jeremiah Love because he's really good. Going back watching last year in the spring game, he's a baller. And you told me he was. I
loved him coming out of high school. And again, a lot of the emphasis went to estimate. I look at this Notre Dame backfield and say, you have 3 running backs that have a ton of juice. And although I love Audric Estime, I think you're looking at 3 running backs that let you hit some more explosive plays. And you look at that Mike Denbrock offense, getting your guys in space, probably a better fit in terms of that Mike Denbrock offense as well. Another talking point to go to, you'll hear a lot of people kind of take shots at the pass catching room for this Notre Dame team. And I think a lot of Notre Dame fans would say it wasn't great over the last couple of years. You look at this Notre Dame wide receiver room heading into 2024, you make some really nice additions in the transfer portal. Chris Mitchell, ton of juice with the football in his hands. Bo Collins, a guy that, going back to his days at Clemson, we always said he's got some ceiling to him. He's just got to put it together. And then you sprinkle in a guy like Jaden Greathouse, who's only going into his second year, a ton of production for a true freshman last year. Entering a guy like Cam Williams. I know you're a big fan of Jordan Faison. I look at this Notre Dame pass catching unit and say, are we taking a step in the right direction there as well in 2024?
You are starting to see them recruit that position at the level you want to see it. Again, you talk about Jaden Greathouse, Jordan Faison, both played really good football, I thought, last year. And then again, you look another couple of young guys coming in, Mikey Gilbert. I don't want to leave him out because watching that spring game and his ability to work vertically and be a problem for corners on the outside, that's, again, something you didn't necessarily see enough from Notre Dame last year. You also obviously bring in maybe a little bit more explosiveness with your quarterback and be able to get the ball downfield. I think you can see something from this Notre Dame offense we haven't maybe seen in the last couple of years, but something that I think is very much the difference between them being where they are and being where they could be in terms of being more nationally competitive on that highest
and
level.
So you look at this Notre Dame offense and say, all right, upgraded, a massive upgrade at the offensive coordinator spot. I think we all agree upgrade at the quarterback spot. Maybe pushed. I don't know if you say downgrade, push at the running back spot, upgrade at the pass catching spot. Dill, the only spot where I don't think a lot of Notre Dame fans would say we're upgrading heading into 2024, and probably the question mark we have for this Notre Dame team heading into 2024 is on the offensive line, right? You lose 2 NFL tackles. Joe Alt, I believe, going the first tackle off the board. Blake Fisher doing a phenomenal job as well. If you kind of got to trust that Notre Dame's done a very good job recruiting that position. They've done historically a very good job developing that position. If this offensive line can just be solid in 2024, this was a top 10 scoring offense in 2023. What makes you argue that they're not going to be one of the better scoring offenses in 2024 as well?
In the development piece for me is key because you just saw it. I mean, they were good at the tackle spot, obviously, last year, but they didn't play good enough on the inside.
Agreed.
Go watch that Louisville game, that Clemson game. I mean, that just wasn't a good enough group in the middle. And I think this is kind of interesting to see. I think every position's up for grabs right now. I think you see some guys emerging. I think Emil Wagner looked awesome. And then I think you kind of starting to kind of juggle who you're going to have, whether it's Sullivan Absher, whether it's Charles Jaguash. I mean, you have talented guys. I think you'll see some of those tackles who are playing in the spring game kick in the guard. Or frankly, I'd want to see that because when you talk about getting your best 5 on, I think some of those guys are going to have to play on the inside too. I am interested to see what they do because, again, you kind of watched in the spring game. There were some inconsistencies, some moments where you're like, oh, man, they're really feeding them a little bit on the defensive line. Defensive line's really good, so you got to obviously take that into consideration. But that, to me, if that unit can come together and that'll be kind of Marcus Freeman and his coaching staff's job this year, that is kind of the missing link because I didn't think it was good enough last year. They obviously didn't really bring in any portal guys, but, again, have recruited the position at a really high level. So, I mean, we'll see what
two things I'll note on the offensive line. One, we're going to need some Notre Dame fans to help us out with that pronunciation. Charles Jaguash, I believe Dill went with. Not sure if that's accurate. Hit us in the comment section with that. Number 2, does that tell you something about this Notre Dame offensive line, or at least the confidence Marcus Freeman might have is he didn't go to the portal and grab a single offensive lineman. So maybe he's looking at this crop of guys and saying, hey, we feel like we have the guys in our building to have a solid offensive line in 2024. We'll see how that pans out. And for Notre Dame fans, you're going to get a test against one of the best defensive lines in the country in College Station week 1. If you see Notre Dame go on the road to College Station, block up that defensive line, win that football game, sky's the limit for this program heading into 2024. Now, Dill,
before we go off the offense, we probably should mention they have elite tight end play, and they've always had elite tight end play. It feels like forever, but Mitchell Evans, he's really good. Eli Raridon, he's really good too. So again, you kind of look, I think this offense is pretty much ready, as we kind of said. It's going to be about that offensive line kind of getting back to the Notre Dame standard.
You get Mitchell Evans back healthy. We talked about Colson Loveland being like tight end 1. Healthy Mitchell Evans, probably tight end 2. He is really – you're even seeing him kind of pop up in some mock drafts. Again, you want to see him healthy, back kind of to his normal self. Really, really good football player. I think the real argument, though, for like if you're high on this Notre Dame team, resides on the defensive side of the football. For the longtime listeners, you guys know that when I look at defenses heading into a college football season, I always look at the defensive line. And I think this defensive line has the potential to be extremely good. Starts off with Howard Cross, probably would have been a top 100 pick in the NFL draft had he declared. Not really sure why he didn't declare, quite frankly. Thought Jason Onye had a really good spring game. You bring in a guy like RJ Oben from Duke. I look at this defensive line and say, I love what they have really in the front 7, because you start kicking back to the linebacker spot. We know what we have with Jack Kaiser, Kingston Viliamu-Asa, Jaden Sneed. Super talented group in that front 7. I think that's where it starts for this Notre Dame defense.
And you look, I think they're going to be deeper than people think on the defensive line. Obviously, losing some guys, but I mean, even Boubacar Traore, junior, number 44. I'll just leave it at that. He looked really good in the spring game. So again, I think you started to see even maybe a higher caliber of athlete in that edge room kind of emerge with those two. So I'm interested to see what those can do. RJ Oben's great. I mean, he's one of those portal additions that I almost think didn't get the proper respect it deserves, because he is about as good as an edge rusher as you'll see in the portal. And then I think you're going to have true freshmen playing or young guys playing in this linebacker room, because Kingston Viliamu-Asa is awesome. And then even some of the other guys, I think you can get them working in too. I mean, I saw Kia Kahanu played really good football in the spring. So I don't know. I think you're going to have young guys going in the linebacker room. I think they're going to have a higher ceiling than maybe what you had last year. I think this front 7. I think you said. I mean, this
you're going after all the tough names on this Notre Dame roster. I give you a lot of credit. No,
those are the guys who I think are good though.
Now, I started saying Notre Dame's defense starts in the front 7, and then when you started rambling on with the different names that I can't pronounce, I started thinking, the secondary, that's probably where this Notre Dame defense starts. You're looking at one of the best secondaries in the country, obviously headlined by Benjamin Morrison. Us Michigan fans, it's Will Johnson, Benjamin Morrison. Like, those are the 2 elite cornerbacks that you see in the country. And why I want to emphasize him first is when you have that cornerback that can just take away that wide receiver 1, take away that half of the field, and you can start scheming up some other things, it's so beneficial to a defense. And that's not even to say that they need help kind of covering up for other guys, because you look at guys like Xavier Watts, you bring in Jordan Clark, who is a phenomenal addition from Arizona State. And I'm looking at the secondary and saying that's a dangerous recipe when you can match up a front 7 that's going to create as much chaos as they're going to create with a back end that can get their hands on footballs and kind of force those turnovers that turn a 10-3 season into an 11-1 season. They can do that. I mean, if you're a Notre Dame fan, you're fired up about this defense.
I mean, this defense is loaded top to bottom. I do think if they're going to win, it will be defense first, offense second. And that's not like, that's just when you have a good defense, that's kind of how it rolls. So I love what they have here. Again, to me, I almost think there's one position. It's that offensive line. If that plays well, I think this team can, certainly be in the playoff contender and be a certain contender to win this thing.
And I want to just take a look at the schedule too, because when you're talking about college football playoffs making a run, it does sometimes happen about, all right, what's your schedule looking like? And Dill, it starts at Texas A&M, August 31st. If Notre Dame wins that football game, and I'm high on Texas A&M, I've made that very clear during the offseason. It's off to the races, right? NIU, you go on the road at Purdue, Miami, you get your lick back at Louisville, but it's going to be at home. You continue to scroll down and say, Dill, how many games are you not favoring Notre Dame in where you get Louisville at home, you get Florida State at home, then you go on the road to USC late in the season? And I start looking at those games and say, I think it's very realistic to be 10-2, 11-1. You're talking about a college football playoff team. And more importantly, if they are 10-2, 11-1, that means it's coming together. that means you're looking at one of the more dangerous teams in the college football playoffs as well.
Yeah, and I'm looking at one team I think might be favored over them in Florida State. And again,
Get them at home, though.
I don't think that's obvious. Like, I think those two teams are really, really good. I think they're a better team than Louisville coming into this year, better team than USC. A&M's going to be an interesting one. It'll be two offensive lines that kind of got to prove themselves a little bit. I mean, naturally, I have a little bit more confidence in what Notre Dame's done, given the recruiting, given the development over the past. Obviously, maybe not last year, but still, I do like what Notre Dame can probably be. I mean,
that game against Texas A&M, like whoever won, I'm just as a college football fan, just fired up for it. More importantly, like whoever wins that game, I am buying stock. And I might be a little late on the buying stock after that game, but I'm buying stock on whoever wins that game because, especially in Notre Dame's case, you go on the road and beat Texas A&M, which is going to be a good team under Mike Elko. Notre Dame fans know Mike Elko. This is going to be a team that's off to the races. I'm fired up about this program. Again, we'll dive into this team from a lot of different angles over the next couple of weeks. Appreciate you guys rocking with the boys. Would love to get some feedback from you guys in the comment section. And we'll talk to y'all later.